Long Island shore was just this side of today's IOP connector and the Isle of Palms commercial district. Breach Inlet reached all the way from that shore to Sullivan's Island. That treacherous span of water was more than a mile wide. It was laced with creeks, sandbars, tidal pools, oyster banks, marsh, and pluff mud. And it was overlooked by very high sand dunes on both of those two wilderness islands. Next time you're out there, take a look at the Thompson Park exhibits and think about those British soldiers trying to fight their way across that wide expanse of water, struggling with the current, running aground on the sandbars, in 15 flat-bottom boats packed with 40 to 60 men each, slowly rowing toward a beach, defended by Patriot sharpshooters entrenched up to their eyeballs in the sand dunes, and led by this man named Danger. Richard Hudson, who was later the first intendant or mayor of Charleston, wrote that Thompson's cannon spread havoc, devastation, and death. A loyalist aboard one of the British warships in the creek beside Long Island said it was impossible for any set of men to sustain such a destructive fire as the Americans unleashed. One of Thompson's men responding to the musket attack recalled, "Our rifles were in prime order, well proved and well charged. Every man took deliberate aim at his object, and it really appeared every ball had fatal effect. The proportion which fell, never to rise again, was very great." Patriots' accounts said the British attempted to cross the inlet 2 or 3 times and continued firing all afternoon and into the night. At 10 p.m., the Americans had only 2 charges left for their big cannon, the 18-pounder. But the British never knew, and Clinton withdrew. A British soldier summarized in a letter to his brother, "They would have killed half of us before we could make our landing good." The action at Breach Inlet was out of sight and soon lost to history. But people here saw a scene that was awe-inspiring. As Colonel Moultrie rushed back from Breach Inlet, Charlestonians on the peninsula, looking out there, saw British warships bearing down on that fort. It was unnamed. It was unfinished. They knew it was vulnerable. They heard the first shots from an 18-inch, a 13-inch British mortar. I mean, this big around. Imagine those shells. And they knew the battle was on. The president of South Carolina, John Rutledge, watched the action through a spyglass from the new Exchange Building. The British Navy then attacked with one of the fiercest cannonades that they had ever unleashed. It was called one of the fiercest cannonades in the annals of 18th century naval warfare. One eyewitness described it as an eternal sheet of fire and smoke. Nervous citizens crowded the top floors and porches of houses here along the battery. From this very spot, right here, they strained to see the action of that fort 6 miles away, where 435 of their sons, fathers, brothers, cousins, husbands, friends were being pounded by some 270 guns from the world's greatest navy and 9 warships. That story's been well told for centuries, so I'll spare you the details that I find so engrossing. The spongy palmetto logs absorbing the shots all day and into the night. Cool, calm, collected Colonel Moultrie and his men firing only 1 round for every 20 fired by the British, yet inflicting terrible casualties. The British frigates running aground on a sandbar where Fort Sumter would be built decades later. And the inspirational valor of men on both sides and the absolute and total Patriot victory. When was the last time you visited Fort Moultrie? Lately? The tourists go. That's where this history comes alive. Nobody can tell the story like park rangers. Go and and take your children and your grandchildren and pass the flame of American idealism along to the next generation and the next. Let them see your awe and your gratitude. We are blessed to have Fort Moultrie and Fort Sumter and the Charles Pinckney site in our own backyard. Incredible living classrooms. National parks have been called America's best idea, and we are all co-owners of these historic sites. Please join me in recognizing historian Rick Hatcher and the rangers of the National Park Service who are right over here. This incomprehensible American victory changed the course of the war. It caused the British to abandon their southern strategy, and patriots remained in control of the most important city south of Philadelphia for the next 4 years. The victory on Sullivan's Island boosted revolutionary spirits throughout America, and it also fueled the fire of discontent in England. Listing things that went wrong in this catastrophic campaign, a commentary in the London Evening Post right afterwards said, "Who does not see that our just and omnipotent Creator approves of this resistance? The man who believes that the Sullivan's Island affair was accidental is an atheist." Unfortunately, popular histories of the American Revolution have focused on the fighting in the Northeast and treated this major battle as a raid or a sideline action. Ladies and gentlemen, the British Southern Expedition in 1776 was no raid. It was a strategic initiative ordered by King George III himself. It took 8 months to plan and execute, and it committed a substantial portion of the British war machine. The king himself expressed his disappointment at this military fiasco, saying with typical British understatement, "The attack upon Charlestown has not been crowned with success. Perhaps I should have been as well pleased if it had not been undertaken." The battle transcended the conspicuous gallantry of Colonel Moultrie and Sergeant Jasper and Danger Thompson and the other men on Sullivan's Island. Thousands of Patriot soldiers covered the landscape from east of the Cooper to west of the Ashley and on all the outlying islands. The total military force facing off for this battle included more than 12,000 British and American soldiers and sailors. That number was equal to the entire population of the city, which at the time was the 4th largest in America. Imagine an influx of combat troops today doubling the population of the city. The battle was intensely personal for the people who were living here. They were as afraid as you or I would be if the most fearsome military in the world were attacking us here today. People were defending their homes. And life as they knew it would be over if they lost. Eliza Lucas Pinckney wrote, "A heavy cloud hangs over us." The entire community pitched in to prepare for the invasion. Men, women, and children, black and white, rich and poor, young and old. The public's response brings to mind World War II and the greatest generation's civilian contributions. Some people present here today lived the stories that we've all heard of the rationing, Rosie the Riveter, gripping anxiety, confusion, senseless loss. I salute those of you who participated in, lived in, and contributed to that World War II, and those who remember the sacrifices. In this place, in 1776, citizens both in and out of uniform prepared right here. Men and women with familiar names like Drayton, Bull, Middleton, Lynch, Lawrence, Eugene, Pinckney, Bee, Mott, Hayward, Alston, DeWeese. The names sound like a street map of Charleston. Here on the peninsula, citizens removed the lead weights from their windows in their houses to be cast into musket balls. The rain and heat did not keep them from erecting barricades on all the main streets and small fortifications wherever they thought the British might disembark. South Carolina President Rutledge even requested that gambling and horse racing be suspended. Huge. In a dramatic and expensive move, the stores and buildings on the wharves were torn down to clear fields of fire to the Cooper River. This transformation not only improved security, it also resulted in a more beautiful city, one that an enemy said had an air of magnificence. Soon afterwards, another said, no American city could compare with Charlestown in the beauty of its houses and the splendor and taste displayed therein. Just like today. The news of this stunning and decisive Patriot victory spread throughout the colonies and back to England just as fast as men could run, horses could gallop, and boats could sail. In one of their first official acts after declaring independence, the Continental Congress sent the thanks of the United States of America to Major General Charles Lee, Colonel William Moultrie, Colonel William Thompson, and the officers and soldiers under their commands, who on the 28th of June last repulsed with so much valor the attack which was made on the state of South Carolina by the fleet and army of His Britannic Majesty. Now, who was this Charles Lee mentioned along with Moultrie and Thompson? He's quoted right here. The Continental Congress knew that the British were coming, and they sent their most experienced general to take charge of the entire Southern Army. Major General Charles Lee, no relation to Robert E., arrived in early June as the sails spread across the horizon. Lee was tall, skinny, ugly, arrogant, temperamental, vain, vulgar, crude. He traveled with a pack of dogs and was said to smell worse than they did. But he had vast military experience, and the man was brilliant. In Charlestown, he came on like a ball of fire, the polar opposite of Thompson, Moultrie, and the Charlestown elite. When he arrived, he inspected the new fortification that had been built at the edge of Fort Johnson across the Ashley. And his first question was, what damn fool designed this battery? When told that it had been planned by the present Chief Justice, Mr. Drayton, he replied, well, he may be a very good Chief Justice, but he's a damn bad engineer. We needed this man. But upon inspecting the unfinished fort on Sullivan's Island, General Lee said it was a slaughter pen that would not last a half hour under attack. He wanted to abandon the island and consolidate the defense closer to Charlestown. 34-year-old President John Rutledge supposedly sent a confidential note to Moultrie, saying, General Lee wishes you to evacuate the fort. You will not without an order from me. I will sooner cut off my hand than write one. Charles Cotesworth Pinckney observed that General Lee appears very clever, but is a strange animal. However, we must put up with 10,000 oddities in him on account of his abilities. Those abilities paid off at Breach Inlet, when Lee advised the frontiersman Thompson about artillery. Virtually overnight, Thompson had his men dig an entirely new defensive line, beyond the range of British heavy artillery, but positioned so that the British troops crossing the inlet would be within range of the Patriot cannons. The result? Havoc, devastation, and death. A hero of World War II, Admiral Bull Halsey, said, there are no great men, just great challenges, which ordinary men, out of necessity, are forced by circumstances to meet. Charles Lee was not normal, but most who rose to the challenge in the Battle of Sullivan's Island were just regular folks like you and me. 26 years after this battle, General Moultrie reflected in his memoirs, in the course of this reading, it will be found how ignorant we were in the art of war at the commencement of our revolution. This refreshing candor by a great American illustrates the truth that our founding fathers and mothers were just ordinary people who accomplished extraordinary things. Thanks to them, The United States of America won the freedom to pursue the revolutionary ideals